All right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt
And Jake here.
coming to you with Talking Torah, and this is week 26. And what's it about?
It's about 8. It's Shemini is the name, and this is Leviticus 9 through 11:47.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking time to stop by, and we appreciate if you subscribe, if you like us, share this with people. And once again, we don't claim to be experts about anything, really anything at all, but we appreciate you taking a minute to be here, and we hope that we can point people to the Scripture, and we hope to help you search these things on your own.
That's the point. Go to Scripture.
So here we are at week 26, and we've got this concept here of what happens when fire falls from heaven due to strange fire. Strange fire, Jake.
It's strange.
Strange.
Yeah.
So I've heard this. I grew up in the Church of Christ, and I can remember Church of Christ preachers talked about strange fire, and they would use it. They would preach on this particular chapter, interesting enough, from the pulpit on a Sunday morning. And they would use it, though, to defend something that they believed to be a stronghold of church doctrine.
Okay.
And it might be, say, the Church of Christ did not participate in musical worship, with musical instruments. And so they would talk about how it was strange fire to bring in a musical instrument to the church building. And so he would preach that using this text.
Preach some damnation of those music makers.
Mm-hmm.
A little footloose
in
your little town.
That's right. And then I can remember people would ask about, so isn't there like a harp? Or didn't it say something about there's harp or something? Like, oh, maybe that was used as a door stopper or something. I don't know. Anyway, so you may have heard this scripture, strange fire. You may have heard people using it for different things. But so the strange fire had to do. So, Jake, would you read this section of scripture here?
Sure will. Just warm yourselves by this crackling fire while I read. Then Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, which took his censer and put fire in it, put incense on it, and offered profane fire before Yah, which he had not commanded them. So fire went out from Yah and devoured them, and they died before Yahweh.
So this fire, what do you think that means? This fire that they used, was it the wood that they used? How they lit it? I wonder what made it profaned.
It's really hard to say. I mean, we don't get a whole lot of detail about it, but I guess initially and for a while now, I've just kind of thought that they didn't do it according to the command that they were supposed to be offering fire. And I've also thought perhaps it was this tied in with some kind of idol worship kind of thing. But yeah, it's hard to say because there's not a ton of information about what that really is.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I do have some theories and some ideas about what is happening here, and I think we get a little bit more information. If I can go to the next one. There we go. So, why did they do this? Was it an act of rebellion, or was it a mistake, or was it something else?
Well, so the whole rebellion thing, perhaps, but not necessarily. And I just go with the when the ark was tipping, and the guy catches it, and so that wasn't a rebellious thing, but it was something he still had to pay consequence for.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was going back there, but so I think it's possible they were drunk. And
So
because
explain your theory, Matt.
So, and the reason is so if you look at this, we started in chapter 9. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then 10:8, we have the scripture. So so basically, so Jake, what happens to these guys after they offer strange fire? Did they all live happily ever after? What happened?
No, there was a consuming fire that smote them.
Yes, they got smote, ironically, by fire, right? So, and then what did they, and there's this weird thing about they couldn't mourn for them, and they had to come out and act like nothing happened, basically, and everything just going on like normal. And then so all that happens, and then in 10:8 it says Yahuwah spoke to Aaron, saying, "Do not drink wine nor strong drink, nor your sons with you when you go into the tabernacle of the assembly, lest you die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, and that you may be there may be a difference between the holy and the unholy, between the clean and unclean." So
it's strange that comes right after this situation.
yeah, and it makes sense to me that maybe that's what happened. They got drunk and they're like, "Hey, I'll tell you what'll be good. We're gonna go in there and light that fire." And that's the last things it was like, "Hey man, hold my beer."
Yeah.
So, which is, just further proof that the people that we read about in this book, they're not that far apart from the humans that you and I know today. So, did some
I know
dumb things.
a lot of people that play with fire when they're drunk.
Yes. Yes, it wasn't a good idea back then, and definitely not a good idea today. But it doesn't come out and specifically say that that's what they did. But but that scripture being there, it's almost like he's like, "Well, I didn't think I had to tell you this, but apparently I do. Don't get drunk and try to do the things in the temple and the tabernacle."
Right.
So it just kind of makes sense to me that they might be connected. And I've heard other people speculate that as well. But anyway, it's something for you to research, check out.
I can't say it's not a possibility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, and this is that verse.
Yeah, so
10.
this is 10:8 that we just read. So, where he says, "Don't go get drunk." And then it's interesting too that he talks about knowing. So basically implying that when you're drunk, you can't always discern, which that kind of makes sense, and you may not be able to discern clean and unclean.
Right.
And you probably can't do a very good job of teaching your children when you're in this state either.
Right.
Not anything. They'll remember these lessons, but
Yes.
not for any good reason. So don't get drunk in tabernacle. So the other weird thing in here is, what do you think he tells these relatives that they can't really show any mourning? That he tells them specifically, don't go out and put sackcloth and ashes on your head.
So to me, the first thing that kind of comes to mind on this for me is this was a righteous judgment by Yah, and don't be sad about it, because then you're kind of looking at his judgment as something bad or something. Maybe along those lines.
Kind of, yeah. It's just business.
Yeah.
Yeah,
wasn't personal. It's just had to be done.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, that's interesting for sure to think about it that way. But yeah, it's definitely puzzling because Aaron had to be devastated. So, these are his sons, and it had to just be terrible to think that that his boys did this and what happened to them.
Right.
So, anyway, so
if you have theories, put them in the comments.
Yep. And so we talked about what he makes them do. Basically, they can't show And in here, would you read this?
Sure.
This goes into it.
And Moses spoke to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his sons who were left. Take the grain offering that remains of the offerings made by fire to Yahweh, and eat it without leaven beside the altar, for it is most holy. You shall eat it in a holy place, because it is your due and your son's due of the sacrifices made by fire to Yahweh. For so I have been commanded, the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the heave offering you shall eat in a clean place, you, your sons, and your daughters with you, for they are your due and your sons' due, which are given from the sacrifices of peace offerings of the children of Israel. The thigh of the heave offering and the breast of the wave offering they shall bring with the offerings of fat made by fire to offer as a wave offering before Yahweh. And it shall be yours and your sons with you by a statute forever, as Yahweh has commanded.
So it's kind of interesting. It's like they have to do some extra task now because of this. Some things were added maybe that they didn't have to do before. Don't you think that's kind of what this is implying? Maybe there's some new things here.
It seems that way.
So definitely an interesting thing there. And then you get into clean and unclean. So
are these fish on here? Are those clean fish or unclean fish?
They're definitely clean.
Well, do they have fins? They have a tail, but do they have fins? And I don't see scales on them either.
You got to use your imagination.
Oh, okay.
So they're just silhouettes.
Oh, they're just cartoon fish.
Yes.
Don't read too much into it.
They're not showing the details
okay.
of the fish. So, but clean, unclean, predatory birds, scavengers, unclean. And then, what about these?
Has to chew the cud. Has to have a split hoof. Like we talked about your crazy fish cartoons here. Has to have fins and scales. If it's a seafaring creature. No camel, no hair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they have those signs in the stores. No camel, no hair, no service.
That's right. Well, the rabbit is in there because because it has characteristics of a mammal, and but yet they're gross. Don't eat them.
Yeah.
Even though in the Old West, apparently they did eat them, but they didn't always know, I guess. Or they didn't know.
A lot of people eat the rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
They like them.
Yeah.
A lot of people grow them for meat.
Yeah.
A lot of homesteaders grow them for meat.
Not a Torah keeper.
Right.
But
be growing them for their poop.
That's right. Fertilizer. And so in 10:16 here, it also talks about pouring out the blood in the tabernacle. We just read that. And then we got the clean and the unclean. And then I think we have a list, a chart.
Chart.
Pretty handy chart. Is there anything that stands out to you, or kind of go over this with us, Jake, about what can we eat and what can we not eat? What's food and not food? Because that's really what this scripture is talking about. Is, hey, people, this is food. This is not food.
Right. That's a good point. That the other things have a purpose, but they're not food. Food isn't the purpose for the other things. So things like of the cow variety, things of the sheep and goat variety, things of the deer variety.
Well, basically, they're
ruminants.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ruminant animals.
They got to chew their cud. Had to have split hoof, but
interestingly,
like a horse,
yes,
it doesn't chew its cud, and it doesn't have split hoof.
Right. So it fails all around.
Mm-hmm. But people eat that one too.
Yeah. IKEA meatballs.
Yes. Oh, gross. And definitely pigs, unclean. Everybody knows that one, I think. That one's not.
Yeah.
And then a rock hyrax. Some of these things I'm not sure.
Don't eat rocks.
Don't eat rocks. A camel is unclean.
I think the most interesting one for clean animals is the giraffe.
Yeah.
Clean animal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about fish? What are the fish we can eat? The fish we can't eat? We kind of talked about it. I
Very
guess.
simple. Fins and scales.
Yep.
Now,
Catfish is it? What is it?
it's a skin haver,
Yes.
and
unclean.
And there's something else that you kind of notice about the skin havers versus the scale havers. The skin animals tend to be bottom dwellers
Yes.
and garbage feeders. Now,
Mhm.
that's not necessarily the standard. The standard's fins and scales, but you'll find there's a bit of a tie in there.
Yeah.
What gets difficult though is things like a shark. It doesn't have scales per se, but apparently it does. It does. I mean, you think shark, not scales, but I mean that's something you gotta look at on your own and find out, because I think they do have scales. So
yeah, there's not a lot of shark options for me here.
well,
so.
we have a shark enthusiast in our fellowship, and she assures us sharks have scales. She wouldn't eat sharks though because they're too awesome.
Yeah, too awesome. Well, it kind of makes me mad. We recently did a series about climate change is real.
Yeah.
And the climate change is real. I don't remember talking about one of the problems, maybe we did. One of the problems in the ocean is that we are over harvesting the bottom dwellers. We're harvesting all the clams and the shrimp. And then now we're standing around going, oh, I wonder why the ocean is so dirty. It's like, maybe we shouldn't, if we followed his commandments, we would be leaving the things in the water that were designed to clean it.
Right.
But we keep overfishing, and they're having to create artificial reefs and do all this intervention here in Texas, actually, trying to get the clams and things to come back. And then the water's really gross.
Yeah.
So
that's what you get, people.
That's right. And pretty much on birds, it's predatory birds.
The birds one is probably the toughest.
Yeah,
because there's so many different kinds of birds, and they only give you a few examples.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's throw it into the mix, Matt. What about chickens?
I know we've talked about it before. But when you look at the characteristics of a chicken compared to the unclean birds here, they're very different.
Yes.
The characteristics of eagle, vulture, buzzards, falcons, they're not really what we see in chickens necessarily.
Those are smart birds.
Yes. Those are birds that are on a mission, and just, chickens just they're different. Yeah. They're not like that.
Now I've heard the whole, if it has like a crop kind of situation. I don't know, but I'm of the variety that chickens are clean, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got up there and he said, "Oh, you guys missed that one."
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those things where, I guess if you study it and you become convicted about it, well, you shouldn't eat chicken. But Jake and I have both studied it, and we didn't, we decided it was okay. But I think that's something you got to figure out on your own. And if you choose not to do it, that's great. I'm not going to argue with you. Yeah. So I get it. So, and then the flying insect thing, we don't often think, and especially in our world today, not many of us look at insects and go, ooh, that's a tasty looking bug right there. I wonder what that'd feel like between my teeth. But in other places of the world, they eat a lot of insects. And turns out there are insects we can eat.
That's right.
So.
Oh, yeah. The thing with if your knees are above your feet, which is kind of a weird kind of phrase, but the whole, locust, grasshopper, cricket varieties, all that kind of thing. Yeah. Stuff that jumps around, I guess.
Yeah. And then you think about in the insect world, there are millions of insects. And so there's really not that many you can really eat.
Right.
And then what about creeping reptiles? Turns out
stay away from them.
None. So kind
those
of interesting.
Are terrible.
Yes, not a single one.
Every lizard is evil.
So anyway,
I love how creeping reptiles. It has on the list mouse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a
Is it a
creeping
reptile?
It's a creeping animal, I guess.
Yeah. Doesn't really fall in.
And interesting
reptile.
too, when you look through this and you look at the verses, he says these are abominable to you, and they make you an abomination. Don't make yourselves abominable to him through these things.
Yeah.
Now, if we're going to say this went away, just realize if you're saying that, this is the same thing he says about uh, homosexuality and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, if he hates them both the same, why would he all of a sudden say one's all right now? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And it makes sense that this was, no one explained this to me early on, but that he created these for purposes, and he never created these unclean things for the purpose of feeding people.
Right.
That was not their intention. They have different things. They're the sanitation department, they're the cleanup crew. And it makes sense. You don't eat trash, and you don't eat the trash that eats the other trash.
Right.
That just makes sense. But also when you think about it, in some ways, by eating unclean animals, I ate unclean animals a lot. I ate a lot of them. But I don't think I realized I was actually consciously making a choice to put bad things in my. I didn't even do the research and realize how they.
It's also very bad for me.
Yeah. And then all the science points out the same thing. Yeah, it's a good idea to not eat those things.
Yeah.
So, and how many warnings do you see? I mean, you see warnings about cooking your meat thoroughly, but it seems like on so many of these unclean ones, sometimes they have another warning about worms and things that you can get. So,
well, fire didn't cook as well back then. So
didn't cook as well, did it?
I've heard that argument.
The fire wasn't as hot.
Yeah.
So anyway, clean, unclean. This concludes week 8. Jake, what else you got to say about week 8 in the Torah portion?
Well, a couple things. One being, I hear a lot. Well, in the beginning, he created them, and he said they were good for the unclean animals. I hear that argument, but good doesn't mean eat it, right? He made a lot of things good, but that you don't eat. But
he made rocks good.
Rocks are good.
I don't eat them.
Well, that's your problem.
He made the sun, the moon, the sky, the earth.
So when he says he made them and he said they were good, good just means they perform the function they were created to perform. A shovel's good because it digs dirt. It's made to dig dirt. Does it dig dirt? It's good. Mm-hmm. So that's the point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then additionally, the other thing I had was, you may be surprised to find how many times it talks about don't make yourself unclean in the New Testament. It's all over in there. Now, I usually go to Galatians 5, where he has the whole list of fleshly things you're supposed to refrain from. And one of them is uncleanness. And where do you find where to be free from that uncleanness?
The Torah and Leviticus and
right,
several places.
That's where it describes it. I don't see anywhere in the New Testament that really describes what this unclean that you're supposed to be refraining from really is.
And I always thought it was about washing my hands.
Right. Well, that's what the Pharisees were saying.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Right.
And and I believe that is true. But what I understood is in my youth was about washing my hands and washing my body. It wasn't anything about what went into my body.
Right. And then, of course, I kind of think of it this way too. If your body is the temple, right? And we're supposed to be, we're a New Testament church, right? Mm-hmm. Our body's the temple now.
Right.
So don't be smearing your temple, Yah's temple, with unclean animal fat.
Yes, someone we know says, don't smear it with pig squirts.
Yes, don't smear Yah's temple with pig squirts. Words to live by.
Yes. Yeah. So that's going to be on the next T-shirt for sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
So those were just kind of the points I
yeah,
had.
no,
about
that's
that.
good. That's real good. All right. Well, if you have any questions, go read Leviticus 9, 11 through 47. It's not very long. Also, while we're on the topic, we recommend a great way to read the Torah portions every day, little by little, is the Daily Bread app. And so we are not sponsored in any way, but we do like to mention things that are useful, and that's useful.
Right. That's a good app. I like it.
So we appreciate you stopping by, and we appreciate you subscribing, and tune in for more. This is Matt and
Jake.
signing off. See you later.